What's going on, guys? Me, Zimzilla, back at it again with another Kaiju character talk video. This time it is on the four-legged fire monsters. And before I get into them, I'm going to make a little bit of a brief aside for the Dinozilla's character talk video. There is a new part I'll be adding to each of these videos, and that is bringing up examples from Kaiju media in general. So let's just bring up 3 examples of Dinozillas in other Kaiju media. Of course, we've got Godzilla being the big example. Then we've also got something like Aegon the Atomic Dragon, a character that is a 2-legged reptilian monster that of course is called a dragon, though looks far more like a dinosaur. And he's got a similar ability with a little ray breath. And another monster that is similar to this would be Jiras from the Ultraman series. And Jiras is of course a Godzilla suit with a frill attached, and he's got the same ray breath ability. However, he doesn't have all the things Godzilla does, but that is because Godzilla as a character kept on expanding, growing, and was always really popular, while Jiras, like most Ultra monsters, was a one-off monster, and a reference at that. So, now I've done that brief aside, let's get into the new character talk, this time on the four-legged fire monsters. So, what is a four-legged fire monster necessarily? Well, that is a monster that in your series ends up usually being the second monster or the third monster that you'll find or the characters find, and obviously usually on 4 legs, maybe 2. However, the thing about these monsters is that they usually don't have any kind of special powers aside from maybe a sonic roar, or they can burrow, curl up into a ball. Essentially, what I'm talking about in this case is the most famous 4-legged fire monster being Anguirus. And Anguirus has persisted throughout the years with essentially no powers whatsoever. However, he is defined by his almost complete divergence from what Godzilla is. However, in earlier concepts, Anguirus used to have a ray breath of his own. He used to walk upright more, and the more his design was kind of finalized, he became his own monster and being a 4-legged, scrappy, tooth and claw kind of creature. And a lot of people will try to replicate that, and in some cases they will subvert or adhere to certain kinds of, as it were, tropes within the archetype. So, of course, aside from Anguirus, we have something like Barugon from the Gamera series, Barugon being the second monster Gamera fought in War of the Monsters, or Gamera vs. Barugon. Barugon, in terms of looking similar to Anguirus, has the nasal horn and, of course, walking on all 4s and spikes along the back. And overall, reptilian, almost lizard-like appearance. However, he's more lizard-like than Anguirus, which is very much more of an ankylosaur, stegosaurus-like aesthetic. And I'm actually going to bring up 3 examples from the Ultraman series, those being Gabura from the original Ultraman, Magular also from the original Ultraman, and Gakuma, who was from Ultraman Tiga. All these monsters were 4-legged, had a lot of spiky bits on their back, tail, but they kept to the quadrupedal reptilian look. So that is essentially what it is when it comes to what a 4-legged fire monster is at its most basic qualities. So, to start off with the characters I have before me, obviously I'm starting from the bottom left, or bottom right, sorry. That being the blue one here is Kelodon. Kelodon is from the same series that, from the previous episode, Ruger and Gigantus are from. Kelodon, obviously, in terms of his color, is a blue with a brown coloration with a light tan for his tusks and the spikes above his head and his back. So, the reason I chose blue was actually to offset Gigantus's red, because Kelodon was made after Gigantus, however, before Ruger was made. So this kind of dynamic between the 2 monsters was established early on for me when I was making them. And with Gigantus standing upright and obviously having a larger head for biting and scratching, I wanted Kelodon to have a armored body with a ribbed aesthetic, so he has armored skin along with just almost carapace like armor here, and his legs obviously similarly bulky to Gigantus. However, in terms of how they're sprayed out or splayed out, they're much more lizard like in their structure to distinguish him from Gigantus's very traditional upright retro sword dinosaur aesthetic. In terms of his abilities, um, I did actually give him some special abilities aside from actually burrowing, which was originally the main ability I was going to give him and the only ability I would give him, but he actually has the ability to spit oil from his mouth. And this is because the monster primarily eats on oil, and he can just regurgitate that oil and spray it at enemies. And if someone were to say shoot fire at it, it's essentially a fire breath. However, because he is projecting the oil, it is pushing out faster than any fire could run up into his throat, and it just fires back at anyone. Or if it just caught on fire anyway, he would just be spinning out his own little fire breath in a way. So it's kind of subverting the trope, however, also adhering to it in terms of the origins of it. And he shares a power with the red guy at the top left right here, or not top left, bottom left, and that guy I'll actually get to right now is Mega Helitris. That was part of the Kaiju series that Dinah Gillis was from, in which I was just taking the archetype of Anguirus and seeing what I could do with it. So Anguirus primarily is the tan and brown color, which is what his main body is. However, the carapace, I wanted to make that run down the neck as well, all the way to the tail. And the spikes accentuate the carapace, but they are not the main part of the aesthetic of the carapace. It's mostly the tail and then the head. So with the head, I wanted to not give it like a standard dinosaur head. I wanted to do something interesting and like outlandish, as it were. So I gave him kind of a Sanheeli elite head. So he's got extra mandibles instead of just a bottom and upper jaw. And the power Kelodon and Mega Helitris share is the fact that they can increase their weight. So in a lot of cases, four-legged fire monsters, when compared to like the main monster, are usually taller when standing up because of their whole length, but they also tend to weigh more in a lot of cases. So what I wanted to do is play off that idea or traits, or just trend as it were, and have them be able to increase their density. So both of these guys can increase their density almost like twofold, tenfold as it were, and they just get super dense and they can just smash stuff even harder. So it plays off of the idea of them being tooth and claw, but they have a little special ability to give them an extra oomph. So moving to the top right here, it's a green stegosaurus-like creature. Both the stegosaur guy here and the ankylosaur, the teal ankylosaur, they were both alien dinosaurs that I wanted to do for another project called Primordial Terror. They're not really kaiju, however, they're like what you can do with the design is very much shared within these guys. So the main kind of carnivore on both these guys' planets, the stegosaur being called Stegosaurus and the blue ankylosaur being Styracopelta. So with the T-Rex, as it's a large tyrannosaur creature that is the alpha predator of their planet, I wanted to keep their aesthetics very much old retrosaur stegosaurus. So this creature's got a very humped back. The sails accentuate that, and they're biggest right at the top of the hump, and they follow all the way down, keeping a very uniform state near the end with the extra thagomizers. And he's also got the dewlap there. No beaked mouth, it's a very lizard-like head. And this trait was also carried over into Styracopelta, who's got a little bit more of a armored head with two extra sharp beak-like protrusions at the front, but he's also got the lizard-like dewlap and the very humpback aesthetic. But the legs are very much more actual dinosaur-like, where they're more directly underneath the body when it's walking. So both these guys don't necessarily have powers aside from their tails, which Stegosaurus has his thagomizers and Styracopelta has his club. And right here, these two guys in the middle, they're both Anguirus designs I had done. And what I want to do with these is see what I could do with the basic silhouette of Anguirus and change up a few things. So I'll do the top one first because it's a little bit more traditional. The head's very similar. It's a very small nasal horn. The crest arcs up similar to the Showa Anguirus. However, his neck has armor plating, and his carapace is more segmented, so it's a little bit smaller little osteoderm pieces that all connect all the way down to the tail with very small spines, which is like the normal Anguirus carapace. However, they all stay uniformly small, and the armor plate carries all the way down to the tail, while with the Showa Anguirus design, it very much is just the carapace, and then there's the spikes that run down without the armor plating. And underneath his stomach, he has armor plating as well, so does his front and back limbs. And I wanted to do that because I thought it would give the Anguirus design a little bit extra protection, because Anguirus is characterized as a very armored up creature. So that was the whole thought process there. While this Anguirus design, I wanted to see what I could do with the Ankylosaur inspiration and the Stegosaur inspiration. So the tail has a lot more of an Ankylosaur club. However, it's also got 4 Stegosaurus like Thagomizers at the end. But similar to a normal Anguirus design, there is no armor plating at the tail. However, there are obviously little spikes that run down. The spikes themselves are no longer spikes, but more larger osteoderms that, in terms of aesthetic, look more like Stegosaurus backplates, while there is other spines that cross over to the side like a normal Ankylosaur back. The front limbs right there, they have little spikes on them, which is similar to the Anguirus design that was in the Godzilla PS4 games. I just liked the aesthetic overall, and it just kind of gave Anguirus a little bit more of a prickly look to him, so I wanted to keep that with my Anguirus. Similar to Styracopelta, this Anguirus has a little bit of a beak to it at the front, and then his nasal horn's a lot larger, and the crown is now facing backwards instead of arcing up and curling around to face forward. And because of that, the eyes and the position of them are a lot more reptilian, while the Anguirus above has a lot more very human, blank, kind of basic Showa Kaiju eyes than what other monsters here do. So that's what I wanted to do here with these guys. I would say if you're going to be making a 4-legged fire monster, obviously keep him 4 legs, keep the overall 4-legged dinosaur aesthetic. It doesn't necessarily have to be a dinosaur, but usually you're doing this kind of design to contrast with your main monster, because in most cases your main monster is going to be a Dinozilla, so a 4-legged fire monster as your secondary is an easy way to create distinction with the second monster you'll ever face. However, this could be any monster with 4 legs, but the idea of 2 dinosaurs being the first 2 monsters but almost aesthetically very different is an interesting dynamic to play with. And if you want to give one powers and the other one not, you can play off the idea of giving the fire monster the powers and your Dinozilla not having any powers at all to subvert the trope, or you can give them both powers, or you can just be very standard with it and give your Dinozilla powers and your 4-legged fire monster none. And even then, you could totally subvert the idea of giving them powers and have something like Barugon, where Barugon has ice while Gamera has fire, even though Gamera is not necessarily a Dinozilla, but the relation is similar to a Dinozilla and a 4-legged fire monster. So that's it, guys. This is another little quick character talk video. I hope you all enjoy these. I'm trying to make these a little bit more structured so I don't just ramble on for you guys. But in the comments, talk about your own creations and how they might be similar to these archetypes, or how you subvert them, or how you just do your own thing. I would love to hear them. I'm Zimzilla, signing out.